Hello and welcome to the Tifo Football Podcast. I'm Joe Devine, and I'm now joined by Seb Stafford-Bloor. Hi, Seb.
Hi, Joe.
Hello there. How are you?
Hello, right back.
I'm a left back. And also joined by the purveyor of all truth, it's JJ Bull the Bullet.
I'm always right.
You are always right. And JJ is very busy today.
Really
so
busy,
he's
really
already
busy.
told us how busy he is.
Very, very
we will
busy.
have to, if the podcast isn't as long as normal, I am sorry about that. But it is because JJ's very
Why are we
Do it
busy.
at
discussing
1.5 speed.
Things
just
we're
so
going
that
to
we-
see on the podcast.
Do it
before I
1.5
go.
speed so that we can...
1.5
say
speed, yeah.
as much.
I think we'll try to go through as quickly as possible.
We're going through.
Because
We're
poor,
getting some podcasts
poor
earlier.
JJ is very busy.
Really busy.
With his job as
Under
a
the cosh.
fun-time content creator. Okay, let's begin by looking through all the things we're going to discuss. Double time. Champions League final. Now, listen, for people, listeners who want to hear lots and lots about the football, we did speak for nearly an hour on Sunday about that. We did a live stream. The video of that is available on the Tifo IRL YouTube channel. So if you want to hear lots of in-depth discussion about the football itself, we'll talk a little bit about it today, but it'll be a sort of, a kind of Cliff Notes version of that. Then go over to the Tifo IRL YouTube channel and watch that video. And also you can see our long and self-indulgent goodbye to Alex Stewart at the end of that video as well, which was nice to do. But we'll talk a little bit about the Champions League final, albeit mostly, I think, what happened outside the ground, because that's something that we did not discuss on Sunday. Other than that, we'll talk a little bit about Thibaut Courtois. We'll talk about Ivan Perisic, who maybe is going to Spurs on a free. That's interesting. Aston Villa have made a signing. Of course, the Championship playoff final happened as well. We'll be talking a little bit shortly to Nick Miller, the Millman, a big Nottingham Forest fan, who's going to talk to us about Forest, as they will be joining the Premier League for the first time in 23 years. Very exciting. Mane to leave Liverpool. That was big news. And of course, Ralf Rangnick, who could have seen it coming, is not going to be a consultant. Well, we'll discuss what that means and more on today's Tifo Football Podcast. And if you like to discuss and more, then you should really visit theathletic.com/Tifo. That's theathletic.com/Tifo, where and more really takes the form of quality content. That's right, isn't it, JJ?
Yes, I'm watching videos of Boubacar Kamara right now.
Okay, can you find those on The Athletic?
Well, you can find detailed analysis of him and what he's going to do at Aston Villa under Steven Gerrard's employ, which would be a very useful thing to do. And
Yeah.
I think specifically from this podcast, what I'd recommend reading is the really very well written and reported article about the Champions League final outside, what was going on there.
Who wrote that one?
Simon Hughes and Moore
Yeah.
wrote it.
Okay.
I went through it this morning. It made me actually angry.
Yeah, okay.
Isn't it?
Well, we'll discuss that. Can I also, just to say, as again an advert for The Athletic, whenever an article at The Athletic has an author and more after it, you know it's good because all the good people have put stuff in there, and that's why it works. That's theathletic.com/Tifo. Okay, fine. I will leave you now in the warm hands and the cool embrace of a tired Sebastian Stafford-Bloor on the first day of his holiday from work. Yes, Seb with us in spirit. Wait,
And body.
And
I am actually here.
and body.
Are you actually on holiday right now?
Yeah.
This is day one of his holiday.
Yeah.
This is the kind of commitment that this guy, you're just complaining that you're busy all the time. This guy's on holiday right now and he's still here in the room.
busy.
I have wasted 4 hours of my holiday.
I've scheduled it every hour today so I can get everything done in time.
It's okay.
4 hours and 1 minute.
Don't worry.
No.
When have you got to be finished by? Let's begin discussing with the Champions League final. Now, some stuff that isn't funny is the stuff that did happen outside of the ground. It was quite confusing. We were all sat here in the office watching it together. My initial reaction was to just be infuriated by the delay. But it became apparent as we read the news and we saw the reports on Twitter, Seb, that something very serious was happening outside the ground, and it was causing quite a lot of confusion.
Yeah, because you had these two dueling narratives. So obviously we first heard the reports of trouble with fans getting in. Then it was announced pretty quickly and put on the stadium big screen that it was because fans had been late arriving. And then no sooner had that got out into the public, then you had all the people who were there, some of the journalists who were there, a lot of people that were kind of outside the ground. No, Sky Sports had a team there as well, defeating that narrative and saying, no, this is what's happened. These are the things which have actually taken place. And also, most effectively, they actually had interviews with people who were in the crowd at the same time. And there's a couple of talking heads interviews that were done with people who were waiting to have their ticket checked. They were being interviewed through metal fencing. It was very scary. It was also, I found the difference between the kind of the public truth and what was actually happening quite frightening, just because it was such a big disparity, and it was such an obvious attempt to kind of defeat a little bit of a dangerous situation and to kind of discredit what people were saying in the crowd. And in that kind of scenario, you think back to a world before social media. So 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you don't have that privilege of people being able to correct things as they're being incorrectly reported. Yes. So no sooner had this got out into the public domain, in the previous generation, as soon as you see something like that on the big screen in a stadium, in a Champions League final with everybody watching, that becomes the truth. And that is quite frightening.
It's worth pointing out, you described there, Seb, like, we live in the age of social media where it's possible for everyone with a phone to sort of live report on a situation, particularly when the structure in place has got something wrong, or the official line is inaccurate. But of course, it was Liverpool fans attending here, and there were lots of people talking about the fear of a crush outside. There were people who were very frightened, even once they'd got inside the stadium, about leaving afterwards. There were many, many descriptions of people who were fans inside the ground who basically couldn't enjoy the game for fear of what had just happened or what might happen again afterwards. And whilst it's obviously not the same thing, like reading those things, it does bring to mind the events of Hillsborough. And of course, it's the fan base that are there. It will have been traumatic for some of the people that were there too. I think that's the thing that's shocking about it, is that the official line was so different to what was clearly happening and what everybody else who was there was saying.
I found it quite strange and very unsettling how quickly that official line was parroted by the French government. You had a French interior minister tweeting that this was essentially badly behaved British fans, which is nothing but just naked, virulent prejudice. And it's a really, really poor thing for a government minister to say. I don't know why he said it. I don't know why he tweeted it out. But very clearly that is not supported by the facts that have been reported everywhere.
Well, JJ, you said you read the piece this morning and it made you angry. Would you sort of précis it for us? What was it that made you angry about it?
It sounds terrifying to be part of it. I don't want to ever go to the Stade de France having read it. Maybe that's a big overreaction, but
I don't think so. I think that's very fair.
Well,
it's absolutely
a few things about Stade de France, right? It's in a terrible area.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the original idea was to help, like a lot of new stadium developments are not designed to, but they think there'll be redevelopment of an area to, I suppose, gentrify it is what the sort of thought is. Whatever your thoughts on gentrification are, whatever. But this area is like one of the suburbs of Paris. Lots of, in the piece it talks about lots of local gangs literally hiding in bushes to jump out. If anyone they reckon they could outnumber or were more powerful than, they were going around and thieving things, and the police couldn't do anything, or they couldn't, or they wouldn't. And so what you had was lots of police trying to police the British fans or Liverpool fans, whoever they are, going through these places. What sounds like a lack of organisation or thought or care for the human people walking around there, blocking off clear access points with police vans. Then there's footage. There's too many things to think of right now in a clear order, but there's footage of Liverpool fans scanning their ticket at a ticket thing, going through it, and then getting pepper sprayed. And it's a calm process. The other point is that they're being put through corridors, like they're bottlenecking people basically, which is obviously the thing you don't want to do with crowds. That's what it's like.
Yeah, there were photos of underneath a bridge, but there were 3 police vans parked along one side.
Yeah.
So it was suddenly a much more narrow walkway.
There was a single bottleneck for, I think, 20,000
people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And then it starts to crush, and the police trying to push them back. And then the police are coming from the back and trying to push them towards this gate. And what you have is, because they're struggling with the policing of it, lots of what's described in this piece as locals. So a lot of them are convinced it was local gangs or organised crime people. That's what they're going to call criminals. Organised criminals, basically gangs coming around and trying to get in to either watch the game or to try and pickpocket and just basically thieve is what they're trying to do. A lot of these people that are around there, I'm not sure if everyone's trying to access it, whatever. So they're getting crushed towards this bit, bottlenecking. That's not good. A lot of witnesses described they didn't know where they were. They thought they were under an underpass or something that couldn't tell. And then all these terrifying descriptions of people starting to have panic attacks or whatever because big crowds. No one likes that really. But then pushed up against the fence. The fence not there. I've read that at one point there was one gate was supposed to be open, which wasn't open until about 20 minutes before kickoff, which has had a bunch, like 10,000 people or something meant to go through that one bit. And even the planning of it, the Liverpool, what do you call it, the fan party bit? What do you call it?
The fan park.
Fan park. So that part was one side of the stadium. And they had to cross like a dual carriageway to get to it, something crazy like that. Yeah. And the Real Madrid bit was much easier to get to along the way. So the planning of that wasn't great. Then there's all that stuff that happens. They start to get crushed. There's children being tear gassed and pepper sprayed. It's just not like, I don't understand, because like police are real people. They're not like evil characters in
it's
cartoon.
Worth pointing out just at this point, sorry to interrupt you, but there was of course like a small delegation of police from Merseyside who accompanied as well, and the first hand accounts from or at least one of those policemen that I've read has said that the Liverpool fans on the whole behaved themselves extremely well in a very difficult situation, and again, like all counter to the official line.
You're also reporting that thing, sorry Seb, but a lot of things is in that article, which I thoroughly recommend you read because it's a really good way to get through it. Properly, much more structured than the rambling thing I'm doing here. But the police were getting constantly involved in battles with all these like untoward people who come and joined in the queues and were causing the havoc, like trying to jump the fence and whatever, and then they're also trying to. Like, that's so distressing. There's lots of people we talked to who'd had their phone nicked, which had their ticket on, so they couldn't get in.
Yeah.
Like, it just sounds awful. Like, I
saw a Twitter thread on Sunday morning from a journalist, and forgive me, I forget who it was, but he outlined a situation in which he had been filming some of the actions of the local police and what the Liverpool fans were being subjected to. And he described being frog marched into some kind of porter cabin type situation, having his phone checked by French police officers. This guy, these officers apparently scrolled through like pictures of his wife and kids and pets and stuff like that to make sure that he didn't have any footage of what was happening. Yeah, that's indefensible. Like that's like. It's about as clear an instance of suppression as you can get.
That's a weird part of like modern history. They're talking about like social media things.
Yeah, it's just what are you doing? What are you trying to?
Yeah, you could lie about this.
Inquiries territory. That's outrageous. Like you're trying to do that because you're trying to stop someone documenting what is actually happening and the behaviour of a body that you are a representative of. That is. Murky territory.
Well, like we said at the beginning, right? I mean, for all of its downsides, thank God for social media, because this is this happens in an era when it's not straightforward for the powers that be to get away with pretending that they haven't done something wrong. And I think what was really interesting about it is the message on the big screen inside the stadium changed a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
I think that whoever's strategy it was to think blaming it on late Liverpool fans made sense was very stupid to show that to thousands of people inside of a stadium if you're trying to keep people calm, because everyone inside the stadium knows it's taken them 4 hours to get inside. And therefore, they know that that's nonsense because there were huge crowds outside. It's not about people arriving late. So they blame Liverpool fans first, and then they try to, blame all the fans, all those big delays, or they blame the ticket machines or whatever. And then there's lots of descriptions of, I don't know. I mean,
let's see which lie people will swallow.
At what point is it like UEFA's poor organisation that is to blame for it, or like the poor policing on the part of the local police that is to blame for it? Like, at what point is it the system that is to blame for it instead of like some of the people involved in it that must have done something wrong?
Yeah, it's just weird, isn't it? It's like everyone's passing blame for it, but it's not like one person's overarching thing. It is.
This is the Champions League final in Paris, a major European city. And this is how badly it goes wrong. Apparently there's no excuse for it.
All the stewards are meant to be really young, apparently. Like, so there's hardly any experience with the stewarding. And there was, I think, one part where there's like 12 stewards trying to take tickets for 20,000 people coming through that crowd. how can you get to a point where you're trying to bottleneck that many people through that with that? I don't understand.
Well, then there are questions like, were they trying to cut corners? How much money did they think they could save? Like, why weren't there more staff available? Why wasn't the organisation better? It's not like there hasn't been a Champions League final every year for the last however many years.
This came up in the discussions around some of the chaos in French football this year. It's been a huge stewarding crisis as a result of the pandemic. So when the pandemic happened, stewarding is not a full-time job. It's kind of a weird extension of the hospitality industry. And when the pandemic happened and football shut down, a lot of these people migrated away from the stewarding, their stewarding jobs, and they found better jobs elsewhere. When football reopened and football tried to pay them, minimum wage again, or a lesser wage than they were earning elsewhere, they couldn't be enticed back. I have no idea whether that was complicit in this.
Well, maybe it was. I mean, I think
French football has been rife with some of the worst scenes I've seen in European football for a long time, including on Sunday night. So Saint-Etienne went down, and the pictures that followed their relegation belonged in a war zone. And it was terrible. I don't know if anybody's been hurt. I hope not. But I kind of naively thought that we were past this stuff, past the kind of the obfuscation and the passing of blame and the kind of the attitude which accompanies football fans everywhere. Like we've had the problems at Euro 2020, and no one. I think one of the problems I have with the UEFA messaging or the messaging of the French government is that you know what you're doing, because you know that there is a certain type of person who is so driven by tribalism that they will just accept what you say. And you'll see it now. If you go on social media today, tomorrow, whenever, you'll see people describing the events, or as someone who's done, writing down and reporting them for The Athletic. And you'll see people going, but, football fans, hey, listen.
There'll be people now also like delighting in the fact that the English media is covering this more than the football, and they'll be saying, well, of course they are, because the English team lost, and therefore they focus all their attention on what happened off the pitch, which is why I remind people that we spoke exclusively about the football for an hour on Sunday. Please do go and enjoy that episode. But that's not what it's about at all.
It's not a tribal issue. It's an issue with authority, and it's an issue with attitudes towards football fans, towards football, and this kind of idea of what is an acceptable way to treat people.
Sure.
Like, you're talking about tear gassing children. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
I don't have the vocabulary for that.
You can link it. We didn't really talk about this. It came out of the back of this. I wasn't really totally aware of it. I think I read a few things when it happened, but the Rangers Frankfurt final, a lot of the Rangers fans were similarly put into very small areas to go places. But they had their battery packs for phones taken off of them, like a security measure, and they also denied them water or food, and they were in 34-degree heat. So it's like old people going about in that. And if you're in a crowd and you're in a bit of a panic, what you need is space and water, basically, just to calm it down. And they're denying people like basic access to that sort of stuff. It's weird. I don't.
You also could,
When it comes to football fans, it's weird, isn't it?
So one of the first times I went to football in Germany, one of the things I noticed, one of the differences was that it feels, and this was an isolated event, I don't know if it's reflective of German football as a whole, but I remember going to it and thinking, hey, it's got this day out attitude to it, which you don't really find in English football. Like, when you go to English football today, as a fan, a lot of places you feel like you're doing something wrong by going to the game. You feel like you're part of something subversive, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that's
it does feel a bit, when you walk in a big crowd, it does feel a bit like you're about to invade a city or something.
Yeah, but this is the thing. What happens?
People
in this
look at you with fear.
Maybe, but what JJ's just described there about people being denied water or food or whatever, or space, what tends to happen is you'll see, particularly on social media, and this is kind of the good bad problem with it, is all of those concerns will be sort of overshadowed by, someone's posted a video where one absolute is not behaving himself, and then that one person becomes reflective of an entire fan base, and then in a lot of people's minds, what they're subjected to kind of becomes fair game, which is just nonsense. Because, like, in the same way that guy that shoved a firework up his became kind of indicative of what happened at European Championship final. Do you remember the picture?
No, I don't remember that.
It's very famous.
But all this might be a lot of geopolitics things.
Maybe.
You have to think what people think of English or British people abroad. Like, we are seeing it from our centric part here, because this is where we live in this country, and this is what we see. And the European media, in fact, you might know more of this. You see what the reaction is, because then like my thought when I go on holiday and there's a bunch of British people there, is I don't want to be near to them.
I feel bad about going on holiday.
I mean, I get to say I'm Scottish, so I can get away from a lot of it.
Yeah.
That really genuinely helps. But then I wonder whether the policing of it is like a no-nonsense approach. They've seen what happened at Wembley at the Euros final or something like that. So their strategy is to be full on, like hard line, don't accept any nonsense from what we know British people have done in the past.
Yeah, but then I agree with you, and I live in Europe, and I probably am a little bit too aware of the English thing and the attitude towards English people, and I probably overcompensate for it at times. But at the same time, like if you have a policing strategy for a major event, you cannot bring in your own political prejudice into it because you're dealing with people. And yes, you may object to the way Great Britain has carried itself in the international community over the last decade. Fair enough, I do too. At the same time, you can't put people in danger just because of that. It's not acceptable. And also, we go back to this point about, right, if you have a really draconian policing strategy, then fine, but at the same time, you shouldn't be trying to delete footage of it from journalists' phones. You shouldn't also be trying to describe a version of events which just isn't true into the, kind of trying to leak it into the international media. That's these two things are not related. And you've got a group of football fans who've gone over to France for what should be the highlight of any fan's life, really. European Cup final, fantastic. And there are people who are talking about, I don't want to go again.
You're getting all mugged on the way out as well.
They're getting mugged on the way out. Their safety is being threatened. Can you imagine if you were a mother or father and you had a couple of small kids with you, or an elderly relative? Because like, what are we saying? Oh, they shouldn't be there. You can only really go to football if you're, 6'4" and 35 years old in perfect health, because otherwise you might get kettled and pepper sprayed and tear gassed. Come on.
Do you know what
These are people.
Do you know what would be a good way to round it up? Is by doing some of the questions, because obviously the police would have a right of reply, or whoever would have a right of reply on written things. So the Athletics, in the article, the questions that they've asked the police, which they haven't come back for, the French police, let's just do a few of them. Why was the decision taken to have a checkpoint at the end of the underpass at Mail de Lipse? Why were there no signposts indicating access plans on the underpass, so the fans didn't know where they were going, where they're being funneled? Why did the police feel it necessary to use space in the underpass to park their vans, which is the thing they have to go through? Why did stewards at that point not have access to QR machines?
That's extraordinary. Really?
Yeah, that's just one part of it. Yeah.
Were you talking me through that?
How do you scan? Sorry, go on, Jay.
So, well, it's the thing. I don't know exactly, because this is the kind of thing they're asking the police. But maybe the French police would come back. I don't know what they're going to say. I can't say what they're going to say, because that's not legally on.
With the QR codes on the tickets, is that what that means?
There were people whose tickets weren't working. So there was that thing that was going around that people had fake tickets. But Andy Robertson said, well, that's not true, because I know people trying to get through.
I've given a ticket to my friend, and it wasn't fake.
Well, this is the thing. Like, there's people, high-level people involved in this. And there's, when you have all people in your social media videos and you go, oh, well, that's just a bunch of people. When this is the problem with, I guess, society, is that when you get people who are actually of note, like Gary Lineker involved in it, suddenly go, oh, right, Gary Lineker's there. Oh, well, can't really hide from this now. People with many followers or whatever, they can answer these sort of things. But I'm led to believe from reading this that people just couldn't scan their tickets, and so then that became a problem. And then you'd have some of these organised gangs going about. I think they were taking photos. I shouldn't say that. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but they were getting access to tickets that weren't real, or they were duplicating tickets, whoever they were doing that. Like other things, like why did the congestion begin 2 hours and 30 minutes before kickoff? Why 1 hour before kickoff did stewards give up on searches and let everyone waiting through at the same time? So then they get to the gate, and that's when the crushes started.
Yeah, that's very frightening.
But that's again probably like inexperience from the young stewards just trying to let people through, and then the police pushing them to
probably
try and
just trying to do what they thought was the right thing.
This is it.
Which is another point I wanted to come. I'll let you carry on, JJ, but I just wanted to say as well, like obviously people's first-hand accounts will lead them to their own conclusions about this. But another thing that I imagine, if it hasn't already happened, will start to happen at some point, is that the powers that be will also start to blame the stewards, or will also start to blame individual police officers, when, again, the responsibility lies at the top. Please carry on, JJ.
Why 1 hour before kickoff did stewards, that's the people going through there. To what extent did that letting everyone through at the same time cause problems, specifically at gates Y and Z? And then why were the gates closed at this point of the ground an hour and 10 minutes for kickoff? They're sending folk through and shutting it down. But yeah, I mean, the big ones are, why did the police decide to use tear gas and pepper spray on children? Are you aware of reports suggesting organised gangs attempted to steal from fans leaving the stadium? The French sports minister talked of 30 to 40,000 fans with fake tickets. How many fake tickets were seized?
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to say.
I mean, if they reply to it at all, I mean, this is the thing, they can just try and they don't have to reply. This is their right of reply, but they don't have to reply to this. They can just make it go away and then.
I saw footage actually just before kickoff of a local, probably a teenager, looked pretty young. He was French. He got over the perimeter fencing in Stade de France and he tried to run into the ground. And there's a Liverpool fan who stopped him from going in. And that's the only instance I've seen on video of someone trying to break into the ground and trying to force their way in, like a la Euro 2020.
People are going to do that, though. I would say, I mean, like at any fenced event, people try to climb the fences. I mean, it's not specific to football at all. It's also something that would be expected by security and should be considered ahead of time by security because it happens every time you put a fence up around something that's interesting.
100%.
People are going to try and climb the fence.
You have to be. That's part of policing or being security at an event like that. It's
okay. Well, can I talk about something a little less depressing?
Should we direct people towards what I assume will be the Athletics' continually excellent coverage of this?
Yeah, I think that what was the Simon Hughes piece, JJ? What's it called?
Special report: the Champions League final horror. It was starting to crush. We were shaking.
For subscribers, it's worth reading that. It's worth reading that. Very interesting. Okay, a quick thing. Jurgen Klopp obviously won the Champions League in 2019 after losing in 2018. He was not morose after the game, apparently. He was asked, and then he asked in his post-match interview, where's the final next year? Istanbul? And when he had a positive response, he told the Liverpool fans, book the hotel, which is quite a nice. It's quite a nice reaction to losing in a final like that, isn't it? To suddenly be excited about winning the next one.
Yeah, it's just good control of your supporters group. Sort of buries the fact that you've lost. No one really cares anymore. I think a lot of it would have been overshadowed by that stuff we've just talked about for the last ages.
Book the hotel taking on maybe a slightly different significance.
Yeah,
whether people will want to or not, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I'm sure people are smart enough to decide for themselves whether it's good to actually make the transaction.
Sure.
But like as an attitude, it's great. It's exactly what the situation needed too. A bit of positivity. Obviously in light of the defeat, but also some of the things that we've just been talking about. It's the right way to think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a quick bit on the game, JJ. The first thing to say would be that Liverpool dominated possession of the game. They created many more chances and opportunities than Real Madrid did. I mean, like significantly more. The XG wasn't as different as that, but I think if you played this game 100 times, maybe Liverpool win 80 or 85 times. Do you think that's fair to say?
No, I've been thinking about it more. So I thought immediately after they'd replayed it, I think Liverpool would be better. I think this is the weird thing with Real Madrid is that I think they sort of had control of it, even though it looked like they didn't at any point. There's something about it.
I agree with that in this specific game for sure.
Yeah, I think a few Liverpool players didn't play very well. I think this sort of it's very harsh but specific defensive errors. In fact, there's another piece in the Athletic. This is basically just a plug for the Athletic, the whole thing.
That is what Tifo is.
Because that it had Ben Mee, and basically there was an article that the Athletic got some actual football people in to talk about and watch the game.
That's right. They had footballers or football people in to watch the game and see how professionals watch it.
Had Ben Mee, obviously a current player. Who was the lad at their lads?
Frank Nublet, former West Ham forward.
Is it Colchester now?
Yeah.
He's a
Taylor,
striker.
the coach as well.
Yeah, she's the head of one of the heads of the academy, I think,
Something
at QPR.
Like that.
But they were watching it and they were very harsh and, well, maybe not harsh. They were very analytical and critical of Alexander Arnold's positioning. We cover it a little bit in the video that we did on Tifo IRL. How he does spot where Vinicius Junior is, but it's little tiny errors like body positioning. It doesn't allow him to maybe be able to clear up at the last part.
That's how goals are scored, though.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
There's always someone making an error. And Van Dijk doesn't go out quick enough to get the ball.
It's very rare a goal is scored, particularly at such a high level, where no one on the other team could have done anything about it at all.
It's because they're humans and they make mistakes. Like and it's not even mistakes.
Otherwise, football would be very boring.
It's an imperfection. It's not a mistake.
That's exactly that's the thing.
It's not the perfect thing.
And it might have worked at another time. Like sometimes things just fall into place, but things didn't fall into place at Liverpool. I thought Alexander-Arnold was actually was not his best in that game. He was trying things like almost when you start trying too hard, things don't work as well. It becomes not muscle memory. It becomes like you're trying to do it, and like he hit a cross shot that I think on another day he would have put into the right area, but just sort of squaffed it.
Yeah, squaffed.
Yeah, it's a good word, that, isn't it?
It is good, yeah. I think I think you're right. I think we talked about this again at the time, but Liverpool, they just felt a little bit off at times. They did create a high volume of chances,
a lot of that was because of Real Madrid, the way they were playing, because they were sitting deep, a lot of depth between the centre backs and the forwards, a lot of space in the midfield which they weren't filling because the midfielders were going wide to be able to receive the ball. And a lot of that will be tactical and sort of talking about it. I think a lot of it isn't. It'll just be instinctive from players like Kroos and Modric. This is the problem with tactical analysis of this stuff. Often it's not anything the manager or the coaches have said. The coaches might have identified that you might find some space here, so just know it. But Modric knows. Like another mistake is that Robertson goes with Modric to pull him out of position for the move that leads up to the goal. But Robertson does the right thing by going for him just because Modric is amazing and then works out very quickly that if he just goes 10 yards deeper, he drags him out.
Can you imagine how difficult it'd be? Like when a side attacks, they always have kind of built-in protections against the counterattacks in their movement forward. Now, can you imagine if you turn the ball over and you turn the ball over to Toni Kroos or Luka Modric, and those are two players who, like, yeah, they're really great passers of the ball, but they also have every pass you could possibly play. Like Modric, like there isn't a pass in the game that Modric doesn't have. Like he's like a golfer with 100 clubs in his bag. Yeah. So how do you?
What you're saying is, even if he came up against Gandalf, he would still
find like a nice sort of raking outside of the boot 30-yarder across the pitch.
You shall pass.
He always has an exit, and and that's going to be very difficult. And so, like when you talk about didn't do this right, didn't do that, you have to defer to what Real Madrid are good at.
Yeah, I can see Modric being in Lord of the Rings as well.
He has a little bit of a
Sure. Yeah.
It looks like he'd be one of the main characters.
I don't think he would. I think. Do you know the sort of long-haired men that hang around with Faramir? Faramir of Gondor.
What does he do?
Doesn't matter, but some of the listeners will know. I could see Modric being a part of that rabble. Anyway,
Alex Stewart leaves and the ratios immediately.
Seb seeing YouTube comments in his head there.
Yeah.
Fine. But anyway, we talked about the football a lot on the YouTube live stream. So if you want to hear us or see us do that, you can go back and watch that. Next up, I would like to discuss after a break, because I think we've been recording for a very long time. It's break time. Oh, what a break that was. A lovely break. The playoff final. The big money game, as it's known in the important high circles of society, the game of big money. Huddersfield 0, 1 Nottingham Forest. Very exciting. And to kick things off, I'd like to talk to Nick Miller, the Millman, who is a long-suffering Tottenham Forest fan, and is unsurprisingly absolutely delighted this morning. So let's talk to Nick. Nick Miller, how do you feel after yesterday's game? As a Forest fan yourself, are you pleased?
On balance, I am pleased, yes. I feel a very, very deep sense of contentment that is born from 23 years of frustration and shambles and various other forms of indignity.
That's nice. 23 years out of the Premier League is a very long time. It was starting to feel a bit like Nottingham Forest were never going to quite make it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interested me that people kind of my age and around the same, maybe a little bit younger, definitely older, think of Forest as a Premier League team in all but name. But we've been away for so long that's just completely, it doesn't really make any particular logical sense, and it just has started to feel very much like, well, I feel quite a long time really, started to feel like we are a Football League team and this is our kind of natural level, sort of mid-table in the Championship. So there was an element. I know every club, fans of every club say this kind of thing, but it did before the game yesterday. It did just sort of feel like winning a playoff final and getting promoted was just not the sort of thing that Forest did. So the huge relief when it actually went the right way was phenomenal.
Palpable. Yeah, it's lovely. Well, I think lots of people will have seen the game yesterday and enjoyed Nottingham Forest within it. If they're anything like me, though, they won't have watched any Nottingham Forest at all for the rest of the season, or maybe ever. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the team as it stands at the moment? And we obviously don't know exactly what it'll look like going into the Premier League season because the transfer window is yet to open. But tell us about the team at the moment. Who are the standout players? Who do you like? Who do you think is going to fare well?
Yeah, well, the team as it stands at the moment, well, standout players, most people I think will know about Brennan Johnson, who has been Forest top scorer this season. He has kind of settled as one of the front two, but he can play in a lot of different positions. Jed Spence, he does a lot of excellent work with Johnson down the right-hand side. He's a kind of right wing back that is currently on loan from Middlesbrough, and I think everyone at Forest hopes will be signing permanently.
He's very good.
Other key players, we play a sort of kind of version of a 3-4-3, and the two central midfielders, James Garner, who's on loan from Manchester United, and Ryan Yates, who's a kind of youth product who was much maligned by fans before this season really, and who has improved a huge amount. They're kind of vitally important in midfield. How Forest will look next season, I'm not sure. It's not this system has kind of worked for the majority of the time that Steve Cooper has been in charge, but one of the good things about his kind of early days anyway is that Forest are quite tactically flexible, so it's not necessarily a given that Forest will definitely play this way, and will definitely sign players specifically to fit this system. I mean, in terms of signing players, who knows? One of the interesting things is that because 3 or 4 of Forest's key players have been loan signings, it will cost quite a lot to sign those permanently. James Garner won't be signing permanently. He'll be at best he'll be loaned back from Manchester United, but for example, to keep Jed Spence and Keenan Davis will probably cost 25 million at least. So you kind of got to spend a decent chunk of a promoted club's budget just to stand still. I don't think the owners will be shy of spending money, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do as the summer kind of progresses.
Quick note on Jed Spence, Seb. Did you enjoy his tweeting to Neil Warnock yesterday? Did you see this?
Yeah, I did. I didn't really know the backstory.
So apparently the backstory is, and Nick will correct me if I'm wrong, apparently the backstory is that Neil Warnock told him either that he wasn't very good. Neil Warnock replied this morning with a equally witty tweet saying, "Well done, Jed, well done. I did say you were either Premier League or non-league," I guess, which sounds like the sort of thing that Neil Warnock would say. So I the assumption I got was that Jed Spence was sending Neil Warnock a little picture to show him just how well he'd done, on the basis that he imagined Neil Warnock thought he wasn't very good.
So Jed Spence was on loan from Middlesbrough this season. He was sent to Forest from Middlesbrough by Neil Warnock, who was Middlesbrough manager at the time, and I think it's fair to say that he didn't get on with Warnock. And to be fair, I don't think he got on with a lot of people at Middlesbrough. There were the kind of various stories from people at Middlesbrough about how popular or otherwise Spence was in that dressing room. There was a lot of talk in January that Middlesbrough were going to recall him, but because because he was obviously playing brilliantly for Forest, but B, because they had this kind of enormous player shortage at one stage. But the word was that people had words and said there's absolutely no chance he's coming back here. So yeah,
is he going to stay at Forest? Because I've sort of seen his name referenced at least in various transfer rumours with other Premier League teams as well.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. He's certainly played well enough this season to kind of attract higher calibre of club than Forest. Possibly Tottenham, who've been one of the teams mentioned, is maybe a little bit above his level.
You would say that though, because you don't want him to leave.
Oh yeah, sorry. If anyone from any Premier League scouting team is listening, then he's terrible, and you should stay well clear of him. Don't bother.
Just one more thing, Nick, if you don't mind, and I'd love you to come back at some point and talk more in depth about Forest before we see them play in the Premier League. I watched the game, and most of it was interesting enough to me as a neutral. But the thing that really struck me, and I think will stay with me, was Joe Worrell's post-match interview, in which he was, I mean, very emotional, obviously, but seemed like a super guy. And he had this description of Forest having been treated differently by various different managers. He described them as being at times a bit like a whipped dog. But the way that he talked about Steve Cooper, Forest's current manager, he said he came in and killed them all with kindness, and he was such a nice guy that he just won everyone over. And they were like palpably honest and delightful descriptions of someone. It all sounded so lovely.
Yeah, he's a kind of journalist dream, Joe Worrell, because he has the backstory of having been at Forest since he was a boy. He's a Forest fan, come through the system, and has at various points. He was sent out on loan in, I can't remember which season it was, but one of the many Forest managers over the last 10 years or so decided he wasn't good enough, so sent him to Rangers for a season where he was excellent, and he's been brilliant ever since. Really, he's technically not the club captain. Lewis Grabban's the captain, but he is the sort of leader on the field, and he's. Yeah, you will always get a good line out of Joe Worrell, whoever interviews him, and there was a wonderful picture after the game of Worrell, Ryan Yates, Brennan Johnson, and a couple of other players who are on the bench, as Jordan Smith, the goalkeeper, and Alex Myton, who are all youth team products who've come up through the ranks and produced by this production line that Gary Brazil, the academy manager, has. I think I totted it up for a piece I did recently, and sales from academy products in the time since Forest have last been in the Premier League is around 72 million, which those figures can't be absolutely verified, but we certainly made an awful lot of money, and that they will continue to produce players, and those players, including Worrell, are kind of the backbone of the team at the moment.
There we go. Okay. Well, Nick Miller, the Millman, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be delighted to have you back at some point over the summer to discuss them in more depth. But we'll be moving on now. Do take care and farewell. Enjoy your victory.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Well, that was Nick. Thank you to Nick Miller, the Millman. JJ, you watched this game. You've been preparing something on Nottingham Forest for a while in anticipation of their promotion. What do you think about them? Do you like them? How do you feel like they're going to do next season?
I like them because they have a sort of history that I associate with watching football when I was watching it. I mean, they won the European Cup twice, right? It's I can't think of any other clubs around Europe who've got that kind of success in them.
Twice in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were pretty good back in the day. I like the way they play as well. So Steve Cooper came in, they had the worst start to a season in maybe like ever. I think it was like 8 games. They're bottom of the table. I might be getting this a little bit wrong, but that's what they were. Cooper came in.
I think worst start to a season ever is wrong, because I'm pretty sure the team that had the worst start to the season ever were relegated.
They were definitely bottom of the season.
It was like their
no. Do you mean the worst start ever for a team that then was promoted?
After like 8 games.
Yeah, I was just questioning like your,
As you
parameters.
I'm always right, so I am sort of along the ball here. But yeah, they play nice football. They've got Steve Cook came in January, I think, and has been really important. The guy who was at Bournemouth before and it's helped marshal things there. Joe Worrell's very important. Scott McKenna from Aberdeen, Scotland International, is doing very good.
How much did they get him for?
I think they bought him for about a total of 5, but it's 3 plus add-ons, and I think Aberdeen get about $1 million of that. Again, I might not actually be right there. But yeah, they play some nice football. They are very back to front very quickly. So you can see
in the transition.
Yeah, so they don't need to keep the ball. They get forward up and like quickly. And Cooper was the guy who won the Under-17s World Cup with England. Really highly thought of. He's a Welshman. So he's gone against his country's will by winning that for England.
Yeah, I don't know. I lived in Wales
do they care about that? It's not.
I lived in Wales for about 7 years, and sure, there are some people that care about it, but the kind of people that would care about it if they lived here, or it's the same kind of people.
It doesn't matter.
It's not really a describer of most people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're decent. I think they need a lot of, like Nick was saying, I think they'll need to change the way they play in the Premier League. There'll be a lot of, I'd imagine there'll have to be a lot of defensive football and trying to hit people in the break, really trying to get to like 37 points to stay up. I don't know how they'd be able to do much more.
I was impressed by how they handled Huddersfield, because obviously, like with Huddersfield, you're worried about Sorba Thomas on the break, obviously his set pieces, but in open play, like that was clearly the game plan. They went into it, Forest had a lot of possession, and then whenever the ball was turned over, Huddersfield were pretty vertical and direct. I thought Forest
they were really direct.
Really direct.
Well, they've been like that all season as well. Like
Yeah.
they are not possession based at all. And I think you can see in the goal difference that Nottingham Forest look like the better team, but Huddersfield tend to grind out results.
They're very good at set pieces, apparently. And they had a couple of nice ones in the first half, and a couple of really nice routines. But I was impressed by, like, sometimes with playoff finals, a team's football can disintegrate a little bit because of the occasion. So if they don't feel comfortable immediately, then some of their play starts to break down. But I thought Forest were patient with the ball. They play within their patterns, and they didn't create many chances, but there was an acceptance of the situation. They handled it really well. It wasn't the best game, and we were talking during it, and you got a bit bored initially.
I actually just phased out then. I'm so sorry.
Can I say something that might interest you?
Yes.
Jack Colback, who used to be a midfielder for Newcastle, plays as left wing back for them.
Really?
Yeah. Jed Spence is
Right wing back.
what I can see has been their best player. This is the one I would think they'd need to keep, because he'd be the one that could be Premier League level.
Sure.
Again, like just repeating things Nick said, but Joe Garner is really important in the midfield. And Keenan
Midfield
Davis.
ball winning was good.
Yeah, well,
it was really good.
That's what you get in that championship. The championship teams, I think the championship's a weird league because it's all about who wins the battle.
Yeah.
It's rarely about the football. There's been some exceptions, like Leeds when they went up, and maybe Huddersfield when they were under Wagner.
Yeah.
Maybe that's sort of exceptions. But a lot of the time, I mean, Bournemouth maybe. There's a few exceptions. I'm not making a lot of sense here. But yeah, they're going to need a lot of money put in. What I thought was also interesting about this game, the things that I found were funny, is you said it looked really slow, but the pace of the game is really quick, I think, because they're putting the ball from goal to goal really quickly with very little control of what was going on to try and force situations. But because they're not as good technically, and because the game is so fast, it looks like the game keeps breaking down and makes it slow and boring, even though it's actually really quick. You see it in the Scottish Premiership.
Maybe just for some context for listeners, I was texting JJ and Seb during the playoff final and saying because I'd watched the Champions League final the night before, this game felt a little bit slow. And JJ instantly, as is his wont, told me, no, that's not how you feel. You feel differently to that. And I'm going to explain to you how you feel now by saying lots of things. And then I just ignored them, the text messages.
I feel like there's some truth in there, because you notice in that kind of game when there's a lot of pressure and when it is very quick, you notice the speed with which players make decisions. And we've gone from within less than 24 hours, a Champions League final full of some of the best players in the world, to a championship playoff final in which these are all really good players. It's just that
There's
put
a
them in
difference.
frantic context and ask
not
them
the
to make a
same.
decision, apply a bit of pressure, and you see a little bit of the few
Sure.
of the flaws. That's not a commentary on the stand of the team.
Well, no, it's also not intended as a criticism. It's just a
not at all.
reality.
It's like if I had to play in that kind of game and I had to perform any kind of role, I think I would just spend the entire match crying in the centre circle because of the pressure. Like, it just looks terrifying.
The purveyor of truth, my truth. Yes. Ivan Perisic is joining Spurs on a free. Is he? Is that actually happening?
He spent a little bit of time living at the Tottenham training ground over the weekend.
Living there?
Yeah, there's
how long do you have to be somewhere to be living there?
Well, he's been,
Because I feel like if I went on holiday, indeed I'm going to Cambridge this weekend, right? And I'll be staying there for one night. Could I describe myself as living there for one night?
I would say that you could, yes.
No, that's wrong though, isn't it?
He's been staying at the Spurs training ground, and
Right.
he will complete his move. But I came to the office this morning and I had a conversation with fellow Tottenham fan, producer Don, and we're both very happy.
Yeah.
Nice grizzled winner who's won everything.
Well, let me ask you this though specifically.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's there to play in a wing back role, right?
Yeah.
He's 33 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, is it okay to be excited about a 30? Tell me why it is okay to be excited about a 33-year-old coming to play as a wing-back role in a Conte team.
Okay, sure. A couple of things. Firstly, yes, he will probably play as a left-sided wing-back, but that is not the only place where he can play. So he could also play probably from the left in the Son Heung-min position, which takes a few minutes away from him. Also, I think there's a great value in someone like Perisic being added to the group, given that he's won titles in Italy and Germany. He got to the final of a World Cup.
He's
won the
battle-hardened.
Champions League. He is a very, very good player, regardless of how old he is, but also he has been around some of the very best players in the game. And I think, I said this to Don actually, I think Tottenham could do with a few more, don't worry about going to Old Trafford, this lot aren't very good, we're going to go and beat them types in their dressing room. And every successful team has that type of person. Not necessarily a 33-year-old, but someone who has that kind of experience, someone who is trusted in certain situations and who isn't brittle emotionally. And that is Perisic. Very good player and has been for a very long time. Can you imagine what he was like in his prime?
Yeah,
Even Perisic, just great player. Great
Exciting.
player.
I liked watching him in the Euros particularly.
So clever.
He made James Horncastle's team of the season in Serie A.
I'm not surprised. A strange little anomaly there. So when Antonio Conte got to Inter Milan, didn't really rate even Perisic as a wing back. Sent him off to Bayern Munich, where he won everything as a wing back, and then came back not as a wing back, but in that kind of area. And Conte has obviously changed his mind.
Okay, well, it'll be fun to watch Ivan Perisic next season on the regular. Aston Villa have signed Diego Carlos from Sevilla. JJ.
Yes, he is a big, strong centre back. Brazilian. He's 29, which should, in theory, be like prime age for Aston Villa. And I can't remember where I read this or saw it or whatever someone said. But I agree with the idea. Is it looks like Gerrard's trying to build a team right now to make Villa good right now, rather than trying to build something going forward.
Yeah.
Like if he's following the.
I wonder if he's got plans.
Well, this is the thing. It could be wise to get them up to the. If it works, it'll look good because they've got their team instantly improved. I mean, Mings is quite a decent defender, so you've got those two now that can play side by side. I'd imagine that's what they do rather than Konsa, but maybe he wants to have options to play a 3 at times.
Yep.
He's got the options now, basically. But this guy, so he's 29 years old, did really well for Sevilla this season. Didn't make Dermot's team of the season that we did, but
I think he's the, like, if you were to choose the best centre back at Sevilla, it would probably be Jules Koundé. But he will be the kind of the one that the very big teams in Europe go after. But
he's the one that Chelsea are apparently interested in, isn't he?
He's the better footballer of the two. I see Diego Carlos as a little bit, not stopper, because that makes it sound a little bit old-fashioned, but I see him as a little bit more of a traditional defender, like physically super impressive, like his fundamentals very good. Whereas Koundé, a bit more modern, but as a two, that was great. Like it really worked. Sevilla had some injury problems, but were great for much of the season. I think it's a great signing for Villa.
Yeah, but then this is the thing. So if it works now, then that's great. But if it ends up that they don't get some of the results they want, which is what's going to happen to Aston Villa because they're a mid-table team, and they're trying to get above that, and everyone above them has more money and better players already, then they're not building towards anything. Like if you follow the Klopp model, you want to bring in players who are about 23, 24, so they come into their prime by the time they get to that age. So buying him now, it's I don't know however many years. Like Coutinho signed for like 4 years, is it? So he might be good for 2 of them, and then the natural decline that might happen when he reaches 32, he's contracted for 2 more years, but that's how you get him in. Then Kamara's younger, that's a good signing. But this guy here, was he 29 now? He should be good until he's 33, 34. It should make absolute sense, but then you've got to plan underneath it. So I guess that's what the thinking is make them good immediately, which is obviously why you buy new players. But is Gerrard looking to try and build the club, or is he trying to make them good so he can go somewhere else after?
You don't really have a choice though, do you? Because if you're Villa and you want to make that step presumably up to Europa Conference League, Europa League football, the problem you have with I think Kamara is a really good player, but then the problem you have is if he has a good 18 months,
people are just take your shit.
Exactly. That. Whereas I suppose the advantage with someone like Diego Carlos is that because of his age and his profile, Coutinho's the same. That you're going to get the best years, and they're not going to be an object of affection for Man United, Man City, Liverpool, because it just doesn't quite fit their model.
Can I say this is similar to my only football theory that I came up with myself.
You have loads of football theories.
No, this is just the only serious one I've got, which was about the 3 to 4 year Everton cycle under David Moyes. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but what David Moyes I thought was so good at Everton was growing the team organically, but doing it across the course of like a 3 to normally 4 year cycle before key elements of that team would leave, and he was able to do that's why I think one of the reasons that Ferguson probably chose him as his replacement, because he was able to do that 2 or 3 times and rebuild a team. But to get all of the right elements in place, judge the balance of it, just so that everyone would kind of convene into their quality at the same time, and then you would have one opportunity for one season of every 4 to try to broach the kind of top 5-4. Everton, every 3rd or 4th year, were always there or thereabouts because he managed that really, really well, which maybe is closer to what Steven Gerrard is trying to do here at Aston Villa instead of growing it more slowly. Maybe he thinks with the team we have now, with Tyrone Mings, for example, at the age that he is, and other key players at the age that they are, maybe the best opportunity is going to be in 1 year or 2 years' time to try to get European football. So growing it over a longer period of time wouldn't make as much sense.
I mean, the obvious thing he's doing is bringing in better players to make the team better. That's
Sure.
Obviously, that's what the whole point of transfers are. I was looking at what he did with Rangers. He built that team, I think, really cleverly. I'm not sure what the recruitment was, who did it. And I know Michael Beale works really closely with him across a lot of things, mostly tactically. But the players he brought in were, maybe this suits Scottish Premiership more, is that there were characters, real leaders, people who you don't want to have to play against because they will happily slyly kick you on the side. Like Scott Arfield, kind of like got Ryan Jack in, who's a really good player, is playing as a 6, turned him into, I think he made him even better. So Kamara is going to be the new Ryan Jack in this sort of team. And then Carlos is just going to be a harder centre back. Like you don't want to play against those. Like if ever you're playing Sunday League and you're up against some guy who is both massive and quite aggressive,
Sure.
I don't want to play against
Would you
him.
want to play against me?
I'd be able to run faster than you. You'd be easy.
No, I'm actually very fast. I'm suspiciously
I
fast.
played foot golf with you, and I know that's not true.
No, I never got up to full speed with. Do you want to race?
Yeah,
I'll race you. I think I might win a race with JJ. How fast are you?
I'm all right.
How fast though?
9.
You're 9 fast.
What do you want me to say there?
I'm 10. I'm 10 fast.
Villa,
We're going to race.
Villa, let's talk
we
about
might
Villa a
race.
bit more. Because
I have only got my boots on today. I'll need to bring trainers at some point, but I will race you because I am deceptively quick. It's the long legs, yeah, and the desire to win. Do you want to race as well? No. Seb, I think we'd both beat Seb. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
On what grounds?
Just on the feeling, on a whim.
I think I'll definitely be faster than you.
But would you think I could beat him?
I don't know.
He can't be that fast.
I don't know when the last time you ran is, and so I don't know if you're just thinking you're fast.
I know. I
you remember what
save
you
it.
were like
I save
5
it
years
up
ago.
every. Yeah, I haven't been at top speed for maybe 15 years. Anyway, people are going to hate this. Let's have a break.
They are going to hate this.
Yes, in the final stretch now. Don't worry, everyone. It's nearly over. Sadio Mane to leave Liverpool. What a sad, sad thing.
I think it's the right thing. I think it's the right time. I think it also spares that kind of slightly uncomfortable moment where Luis Diaz becomes a more permanent member of the side. Not quite sure what to do with Sadio Mane. And also, what else is there for him to do?
Yeah.
He's achieved amazing things. He might yet win probably not. He probably won't win the Ballon d'Or because Liverpool didn't win the Champions League, but he should be in that conversation on the shortlist. And he's been a wonderful player, and time to go and do something different. German press seem convinced that he's going to Bayern Munich
Yeah.
to fill the kind of the Robert Lewandowski hole in that side, which I don't think is a particularly attractive option.
It doesn't seem completely certain yet, though, does it? No.
No, I'd imagine there'd be Sadio Mane will still interest most of the very, very good teams in Europe.
Real Madrid would be good for
Real
him.
Madrid would be
Playing
good
the right
for him.
side of that
yeah,
attack.
for
That'd be
sure.
perfect,
yeah, add him alongside Benzema and Vinicius. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it feels like the right time. It's just go and do something good while you're still in the prime of your career. Before you reach the downslope, and he's still terrific. So yeah.
Okay. Well, best of luck to him. It's been a pleasure to watch him play over the last.
I think I could make a case for him being one of the most underrated players in Premier League history,
Yeah.
just because everyone knows he's really, really good. There are so many things he does which I don't think get quite enough recognition. Like he's really good in the air, which
I
you
agree.
wouldn't think of when you watched him.
Well, also, I think I've said this about Mane before, but when he was at Southampton and I saw him score lots and lots of lovely goals, I thought, he's a good player.
Yeah.
And I never thought he was Liverpool quality.
Me neither.
And then
Me
when he
neither.
went to Liverpool,
Yeah, me neither.
I thought, oh, wow, he's a fantastic player. But I never thought he was one of the best players in the world, partly because he was stood next to Mohamed Salah, which makes it difficult to look good. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think he is massively underrated. Yeah. Well, anyway, he's gone now.
He's going.
He's going.
He hasn't gone. I mean, he's
Okay.
just.
It's just a throwaway ending there.
You got to be careful. I mean,
got to be careful.
you do have to be careful. Yeah.
Got to be careful. Rangnick is not going to be a consultant.
No, he's just gone. You don't have to be careful.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Rangnick's gone. He's gone.
You
Yeah.
can just be laissez-faire.
You don't have to be careful
No,
there.
at all. Don't be careful.
Because Rangnick wasn't.
Be reckless.
Rangnick was. Anyway, it's interesting. An end to a saga, which grew boring quite quickly, I would say. I liked it at the beginning when it felt like a new world was approaching. Do you remember 9 months ago when there were sort of thoughts, suddenly I thought, maybe Man United will be really smart for 10 years. Maybe they'll do a Liverpool or they'll do another smart team. And all of those things that they do now will have forgotten about rear view mirror stuff. We'll go, do you remember when Man United made this silly decision? But now I realise that was a stupid thought. And I'm the fool,
It's just an amazing thing.
That makes it sound a lot like I'm saying that Rangnick was the solution answer to all of those problems. That's not what I'm saying. But, it's been an interesting 9 months, let's put it that way.
You finish second, you spend your summer signing Jadon Sancho, Rafael Varane and Cristiano Ronaldo, and you get considerably worse.
Yeah. There's a lot to come over the summer.
They were not careful.
No, they weren't careful.
It was really funny.
Yeah, it is quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet he finds it funny as well.
Rangnick.
Yeah. It's like they phoned me up, got me in to do this thing, then didn't actually ask me to do anything that I was meant to do.
Now I've got the Austria job.
Gosh, job. Like, am I a consultant? And I wonder, it sounds like that club's been run by, I think it's last week, or like by the Bluth family. It just sounds weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I also like the idea. Listen, Erik ten Hag is there now, and obviously seems like a very smart and competent coach. But I like the idea that you try to convince a friend to do something for a long time, and when they finally do it, they have one bad experience, and then they decide that everything related to that thing is not good anymore. Yeah. It feels a bit like that. It feels like Manchester United. There's a kind of alternate fantasy world in my head where they've sort of thought they made one smart decision which backfired, and therefore we can't do anything smart ever again. Listen, there'll be all sorts of postmortems on whether or not it was a smart decision. I liked the concept of the decision. I admire the fact that they tried to take a slightly different approach than they had done in the past, and I think it very clearly hasn't worked out, and there could be numerous reasons for that from both sides. Again, I want to make it clear, I'm not just defending Ralf Rangnick as a person who's done all the right things. I think that's probably not the case. But I admire the fact that there was at least a willingness to do something a bit different.
It was like a smart decision made by people who didn't understand what might be smart.
Sure.
And also, you are right about Rangnick, because there is clearly a share of the blame on his side too, because if you read some of the Athletics reporting on some of the things that went on at Man United over the past few months, I think I don't think he put his very best foot forward there.
No, and also I think if anything, rather than the consultant thing, the interim thing is probably the element that has complicated it the most, because I read that whilst he came in those initial few weeks, tried to sort of plant his coaching ideas within the team, when they didn't work, he just abandoned them because he thought, well, I'm only going to be here for 6 months. A new permanent coach is going to come in and make some serious changes. There's not really any point in me spending for the next 4 to 5 months drilling my ideas into a team if they're going to change. So I'll just try to pick the best team and play the players the way that maybe they want to play. And the speed with which he seemed to abandon that is either suggestive of him not really wanting to carry on doing that, which is possible, right? These are all my theories, by the way, not things I know. Maybe the players not really responding that well to it, which is, again, possible. Or maybe, the whole situation just being not fun.
I think he's just gone and gone, I don't think I have the time to do this, and I don't care enough.
Right.
So I'm just going to...
How much effort is it
let
really
Bruno Fernandes
worth
do whatever
putting
he wants
in?
to do. I'm not going to bother arguing with this guy.
Yeah.
Here's Ronaldo. I'm not going to win a battle with this guy. Just let him...
The thing I'll remember about this Man United season is just how much of it was briefed to the press and how much commentary there was from the dressing room itself. and it was a kind of
And from Rangnick.
and from Rangnick, but it was also like just how much noise there was. That was kind of that describes something not particularly good.
Part of that is because he's quite disassociated from the club even when he was there.
Yeah.
So he was sort of going, "This is nonsense, by the way. This isn't right. This isn't right. We need to fix this."
Do you mean from players though?
Yeah, I just think there was an awful lot of conversation about training methods, about what players thought about certain things. I mean, there was probably a 3-week news cycle about what Man United players thought of Harry Maguire's captaincy.
Yeah.
That's quite weird.
Yeah.
I thought the Maguire episode itself was a little bit overblown and very kind of melodramatic in that Man United sort of way.
Sure.
Like he had a bad season, but he became the very worst player who had ever played professional football.
Yeah.
Which I got kind of bored of that pretty quickly.
Well.
And yeah, just there was a tone to Man United which was really unattractive this season, I think.
Well, here's hoping for some something better from next season.
Or worse.
Or worse. Is there anything else that anyone would like to say before we finish? JJ, I know you're very busy, so we probably want to wrap up now.
Are you nervous about Scotland's World Cup qualifying playoff?
Oh, yeah, when is that?
Against Ukraine Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Do-
And then
you think-
if they win, it's Wales, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you will beat Ukraine?
It's very difficult to work out because Ukraine have a little bit more to play for.
He's
than
very
just that
confident.
game.
Like, off the podcast, he's extremely confident.
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to know what's going to go on with that game because they're both quite evenly matched. Ukraine, like Scotland, have some good players and it's a good team, but they have to rely on scoring on the break most of the time or from a corner.
Yeah.
Or some massive guy smashes it in with his head. Grant
Sure.
Hanley.
Yeah.
Scott McKenna, that's what's going to happen. I think Tierney's injured for it, which is a shame because he's one of the best players we'll have.
Yes.
And we'll stick with the same system, which is the 3 central defenders with Captain Robbo doing his runny tricks up and
Sure.
down the line.
Yeah.
Don't know who's going to play up front. Ukraine have Zinchenko. He's nice. Yarmolenko. A couple of boys. Who's the guy at Everton? He was decent towards the end of the season.
Oh, Mikolenko.
Mikolenko, yeah.
Yeah.
They have some decent players, Ukraine. And yes, obviously they'll be a bit fired up.
Yeah.
Understandably.
Well, speaking of that, I did watch an advert for this game on, I can't remember if it was the BBC or Sky, I think it might have been Sky, but it's one of those funny adverts where they sort of, they've got the person doing the voiceover, and at the end of it, it's a serious montage of Scottish footballers and a reference of when the game is being played, 2 games to the World Cup, and the voiceover ends with a "Come on, Scotland," kind of with as much gusto as I've just said it now. And I often think with when football fandom or chanting or things that are like emotive in nature, and that's the only reason they exist, when they become a commodity or they are used in a corporate environment or on such a thing as an advert, they don't make any sense. They're completely out of context. You can't say "come on, X team" in an advert. It doesn't work like that. No one would ever say, you only say that when you are at a game or you're watching at home and you are emotionally invested and something compels you to shout something meaningless because no one will they can't hear you. Do you know what I mean? It's an irrational, emotional response to something. No, hold on, I'm still going. And I fully support it. I get it. It's exciting. It's one of the things that's exciting about football. But when you transplant that into a corporate environment, to an advert, it doesn't work, and it does a disservice to the. Neither of you care what I'm saying.
You know when one of us will be talking to him and he'll say something like, "Oh, I've zoned out." That's what's happening inside his mind whilst we're talking.
I just don't really know the point, and you've never mentioned this before, so I don't believe you're actually angry about it.
I don't know. I find that stuff
falsify.
No, I find that's. How dare
anger.
you suggesting that I'm inflating my own anger?
Just trying to make.
He's constructed a
podcast
contrived
interesting.
grievance.
He's trying to create a narrative to make this podcast interesting.
That's really not what I'm doing. That stuff annoys me.
Joe, also, JJ's super busy, so maybe.
Oh, I forgot you are busy, aren't
Oh
you?
yeah. So in summary, I'd obviously love it if Scotland were to win to get through to the World Cup if we were to not lose to Gareth Bale. But it would be quite nice if Ukraine won because
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if they win.
He'll mind a bit.
He'll mind a bit.
I do at the time. Yeah. I better forget all my.
Making something up for the narrative of the podcast.
Oh, let's
There we
finish
go.
the podcast.
Imagine.
I want to go home.
Yeah. I'm more annoyed about your suggestion than I am about that thing, but still.
Then I have achieved my goal.
Podcast is still going. Let's
Still
finish it.
going.
Let's
Well,
finish it.
I think Joe's going to hold on to that for a little bit of time.
I'm going to hold on to that, yeah. I'm going to hold on to that, yeah.
It's still going.
I'm going to make you pay.
Personal and working relationship is often
Personal
heavily-
relationship.
Got an airport to go to.
That's
plane
gone.
to catch.
I love
That's
that.
gone
I
now.
love that.
It's mostly insults.
On goes the podcast.
Seb is on holiday, that's
and
true.
on and on.
Yeah,
Forever and ever.
yeah.
Shall we finish?
Let's keep going.
I think we should keep going.
May I leave?
No. Seb Stafford-Bloor, thank you very much. Do go on a deserved holiday now. Yeah?
Hooray.
Just be thankful that I haven't fired
haven't
you
rescinded it.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And JJ Bull, watch your step. Watch yourself. And thank you. That's the end of the Tifo Football Podcast. We'll be back next week, introducing a new person, I think. Or maybe on not next week's episode, maybe the one afterwards. But
We might have news of a new person, though.
we'll have news of a new person. Well, there is a new person. That's the news of a new person.
Yeah, but we haven't revealed the new person
I
to all
mean-
the people yet.
Yeah, we'll peel the new person's skin off, reveal the flesh.
Skeleton boy.
Anyway, come back next Tuesday for more. And until then, take care and see you later. Bye.
Bye.